In an early morning post, Donald Trump continued his scorched earth policy against anyone who isn't currently protecting him in a courtroom, this time issuing a not-so-thinly veiled threat against Joe Biden. He wrote, "Why didn't crooked Joe Biden tell his Justice Department to file the lawsuits and indictments against me 3 years ago instead of right in the middle of my campaign for president? You're setting a bad precedent for yourself, Joe. The same thing can happen to you. These third-world Biden indictments, which should never have been filed, would have been tried and over with years ago. My sleazebag opponent should not be able to do this during my campaign or before the election." In other words, Donald Trump is at the same time saying that purported political prosecutions are bad, and also teases that if he becomes president, he'll do the same thing to Joe Biden. Truly a man of principle we're dealing with here. Now, just a few points. First off, Trump says that the DOJ should have filed these lawsuits 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago, the president was Donald Trump. So if he's concerned about why the DOJ did or didn't do something, I'm not sure how beneficial it would be to ask Joe Biden, since he probably wasn't doing too much conversing with the Justice Department. And beyond that, the election hadn't even happened yet 3 years ago. So again, it probably would have been doubly tough for private citizen Joe Biden to suggest that the DOJ prosecute Trump for a not yet committed crime. But hey, other than that, no notes, Donald. But more importantly, on the whole issue of Trump blaming Biden, Joe Biden didn't tell anyone to do anything. Remember, it was not Joe Biden who indicted Donald Trump. It was not a Democrat who indicted Donald Trump. It wasn't any politician who indicted Donald Trump. Trump was indicted by juries of his peers in a raft of different jurisdictions based on the evidence presented by prosecutors. Of course, that didn't stop Trump from blaming Biden anyway, because Donald Trump is physically incapable of taking responsibility for his own actions. And so even though it was him who decided to try and overturn an election, even though it was him who decided to try and steal documents from the White House, even though it was him who incited a mob to the US Capitol, this is all now somehow Biden's fault that Trump is being held to account for his behavior. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. What's craziest about blaming the left is that it was the left who tried to stop Trump. We were all collectively begging and pleading for Trump not to try and overturn an election, for Trump and his acolytes not to interfere in the electoral certification process, for Trump not to meddle with voting machines and state legislators. In fact, the left were the only people who were telling Trump to do the right thing. Had he listened to us, he literally wouldn't be contending with a raft of criminal prosecutions right now. This is like a drunk dude being surrounded by his 10 drunk friends who are telling him he's fine to drive home, and one sober friend who's offering to drive him. And when he drives home anyway and crashes, he turns around and blames the sober guy, the only one who gave him the right advice. The Democrats are the sober guy in this scenario, and the drunk idiots, that would be Trump's allies. And somewhere along the line, the analogy went away, and now I'm literally just talking about Rudy Giuliani. Notice too how Trump claims that it's unfair to bring about this indictment in the middle of his campaign for president. He says, "My sleazebag opponent shouldn't be able to do this during my campaign or before the election." And the suggestion is that no one should be held to account so long as they're running for office, or else it's clearly a way to interfere in their campaign. But here's the thing, that is why Trump announced his candidacy so early, so that he could always be a candidate and then always have this excuse. From the moment he announced, he decided that he could then immediately turn around and say, whoa, 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 you're only prosecuting me because now I'm a candidate for office. I mean, hell, the guy could literally just keep running for office forever and then pretend that he's covered by some magic force field in perpetuity. The truth is that Trump was already being prosecuted before he announced his candidacy, but announcing his candidacy afforded him that counter-argument, and that's what he wanted. This is about the narrative that Trump is the victim of a political persecution. Even though he is not the victim, he is the criminal. And that's the part he wants you to forget, because manipulation is pretending that everyone else is at fault for your own abusive behavior. The irony being, of course, that Trump is continuing to perpetuate the same lies against his supporters that got him into this mess in the first place. Just like he lied about the 2020 election and used that as a predicate to then incite an insurrection against our own government, he is continuing to lie about himself being the victim of a political persecution here. If you're a Trump supporter or you know a Trump supporter, don't the lies get tiring? Don't you recognize the oozing contempt that he has for you, that he treats you as his marks on a constant basis? He knows the election wasn't stolen. He heard his entire staff, admittedly, from Bill Barr to Mark Meadows to White House counsel, tell him the truth. He knows his legal team lost over 60 court cases in the venue where they litigated this exact issue, including 8 at the hands of judges who he himself appointed. He knows there's zero merit to any of his claims, but most importantly, he knows that he can trick his supporters, and so that's the part he focuses on. He knows the truth, but he chooses to lie because the one constant for Trump is that he could dupe the people who trust him most. I don't know about you, but if that was someone who I supported, I would be pretty fucking upset. So I don't want to tell Republican voters how to live their lives, but I would demand more from my elected officials, not least of whom is the leading candidate for President of the United States out of my party. If I knew that his entire strategy to get reelected was solely predicated on lying to me and other members of my political party, I would probably tend to think that would be disqualifying. But then again, maybe I'm just not really understanding what it's like to be in a cult. So look, Trump will continue to whine about his prosecutions, but he's got no one to blame but himself. Joe Biden didn't make him commit crimes, nor did the Democrats make him commit crimes. In fact, the left were the only people whose advice, had he followed it, would have kept him out of the courtroom. But because he hates his own supporters, he will continue to lie to them at every turn, and he will never fail to diffuse responsibility off of himself. Donald Trump is running to lead the party of personal responsibility. Now might be a good time to actually take some. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.